Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. If you're watching on YouTube, you can find out more about what we do at officehours.global. First hour is general discussion about media and virtual production. Second hour is usually a little something we want to spend a little bit more time on. Today, we're celebrating that we've done this 700 times. It's arbitrary, I know, but it's still 700. So every 100 or so, we kind of look back and look at what we've done and look at where we're going. And so today will be a little bit of a retrospective day. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about the Olympics graphics. We talked about the Super Bowl graphics last week. We'll talk about Olympics tomorrow, and we might have some friends in after hours. So it's a good day to be here for those. So check that out. On Thursday, we'll talk about Office Hours 2.0, and we'll try to turn on the engine again. The engine didn't turn over on yesterday, but we're going to try again tomorrow. So we'll be hopefully slowly making our transition to 2.0. On Friday, I'm really excited about this. On Friday, we have some friends of mine, old classmates of mine, actually, Jeffrey Orthwine and Andy Sullivan, and they did a movie called Boca with my brother, actually, long ago. You can probably find it on Netflix, and so they're doing another movie, and they're going to give us kind of an inside scoop. So they're going to talk about the story, they're going to talk about the storyboarding, previs, all those things on Friday, and then we're going to have a couple sessions with them as they get ready to do the shoot. And then we're planning to see some of the shoot from behind the scenes. So it's pretty exciting. So Friday should be really interesting. Saturday, of course, is education, 2 hours of education from 8 to 10. And then at 10 o'clock, John Snyder's going to come in and is going to come in and he's going to talk about how to avoid death by PowerPoint. We're all hoping for that. Everybody watches that. Anyway, so that's coming up. And of course, Sunday is the more philosophical day. 2 hours of us kind of talking about more why we're doing what we're doing. And you can come up with things that you're frustrated about or that you're excited about with Office Hours. 9 o'clock on Sunday, Nick Justishin is going to show you how to export a metahuman out of metahuman for Unreal. The reason we're doing this is for the OH space. Nick is putting together a VR in Unreal, a control room. You can be in it. There's a lot of room, so a lot of you can be in it. And we sent out video and instructions on how to do the metahuman process, so you can get ahead of it and start figuring it out. We will go through all of that on Sunday, but if you want to get the most out of this learning opportunity, look at the email that went out this morning. Check out the description that Nick did. Watch the little movies. So there's a little bit of homework for all of you, and then you'll just get more out of the class on Sunday. It's 9 o'clock right after the regular office hours. And one last reminder before we jump into it is that we will reset. We're resetting everything at 4 o'clock. It was too complicated. I tried to split it up and have one part at midnight, one part at noon. It's just 4 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. So just know that the entire Mikana resets every day at 4, and that's an opportunity for all of our viewers, all of our producers to start asking questions. Really, the answers will be better if you take your questions and ask them at 5 or 6 in the evening on Pacific Standard Time, or anytime before 5 or 6 in the morning, because it gives us more time to look at it and think about it. And that's going to become more and more important as we move forward. So stay tuned for that. All right, let's jump into the first question. Take it away, Dennis.
Our first question today comes from Tony Mobley in Newnan, Georgia. And he says, I want to thank Office Hours and Catherine Harrop, George Butter's wife, for the birthday celebration all day yesterday. Very much appreciated.
Go ahead, Tony.
I just wanted to say, thank you, Office Hours, for everything that happened yesterday. And I also want to say, if you are doing a show of any kind, I think it's important to watch the show, not so much for my sake, but for the masterful job that I believe that Catherine Harrop did. She did a fantastic job. I was very comfortable, different side of the chair, and it was a good experience. If you are doing any type of show, I encourage you to watch her.
That's great. Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, happy birthday, Tony. And I just want to say thank you for blazing the trail and starting a show that will inspire others to do the same. They'll start shows. So keep it up. Good work, Tony. Great job.
We're going to keep on spawning more and more shows. All right, next question.
Eric Price from Kansas City says, as a huge fan of my now ancient GH4, what thoughts do panelists have about the details revealed in this morning's Lumix GH6 launch event?
Go ahead, Sky.
Well, it makes the GH4's used versions even cheaper. And since they are pretty much tanks except for the HDMI connector. I actually went out and found a used one. So I'm interested in the GH6, but the GH4s are pretty rock solid for me.
Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, my GH4 is in the shop right now. So unfortunately, but I'm really looking closely at this new camera, because it's not so much what they're releasing it with as so much as what the future upgrades are going to be. They're talking about direct recording to solid state drive over USB, and they're talking about ProRes recording for DCI, 4K, and full HD. HDMI interface is brought up to the version 2.1, and finally 4K/120 over HDMI with live view and 4K 120 raw stream over HDMI. These are not in the initial release, but they are promised in the next release of the camera. That's pretty sensational. This is the ultimate cult filmmaker's camera.
Yeah. I think that the interesting thing there is that at the initial output, when I looked at the stats, I thought, well, it's okay, but it does look like the trajectory looks a lot better than what we what we've had in the past. So I think that the trajectory looks good. The HQ is good. I think as a Blackmagic user, you look at it and go, well, I still can't shade it, and it's still not recording in RAW, really recording in RAW there. And so there's a lot of things that it doesn't have that I have in a Blackmagic camera. I do think that the GHs just look pretty. Like the image looks really good. So we'll see how it goes. I do think, I don't know if there's a question that's going to come up about this. We talked about it a little bit in After Hours. How they did the event was really right up our alley. For what we did there is that what they did is they did 10 minutes of a well-produced video about what they were doing, not a presentation, not PowerPoint, but a well-produced event. And then they went straight into Q&A. I wonder where they got that idea. All right, next question.
Next up is Douglas Carmichael, who asks, would creating educational settings where young people felt safe and included help reduce the risk of their getting sucked into antisocial or violent behavior?
Go ahead, Jason.
Of course it will. It's important to remember that it's really easy to forget the way that children need to be engaged. This is one of my favorite comics of all time, because it rings true to me about the way that not understanding media today tends to leave people in the lurch.
Yeah, go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't see how it wouldn't. And office hours education day on Saturdays is definitely a step in that direction. Yeah,
and just as a note, whoever's doing traffic managing, I think you're doing it by recent rather than by popular. Whoever's doing that, just a note. I was trying to figure out what was going on here. As far as education goes, I think that the big thing is accountability. People being accountable for their behavior is a big piece of how you tighten things up a little bit. Next question.
Next up is Douglas Carmichael. How can we create pathways into the industry for those with non-traditional backgrounds that may not fit the HR mold?
Go ahead, Paul.
This is a kind of a tough question. Creating pathways to the industry with non-traditional backgrounds. I think we're doing this here on Office Hours. We are creating pathways for those with who don't fit in the mold, in the HR mold.
Yeah. Go ahead, Bill.
I think, as Alex has always said, one of the things that we prize, and I am as guilty of this as anybody on the set, is the idea of don't be weird. I think he introduced me to that thing. And it is important when you get on set and you're getting into the industry to not stick out in the wrong ways. In some senses, that goes against that little creative genius of a boy or girl who's coming into it, who sees things and wants to do them different and may run against the grain a little bit. And so I'm always cognizant of the fact that there's a balance to be made there. You can have a crew of robots who do not think outside the box ever, but you can also have a crew where a little bit of disorder and being able to handle that can help that kid who thinks differently really do some amazing things if they're given a chance. And balancing that is always going to be an issue.
Yeah, I think that the issue there, by the way, I just want to make sure I qualify the don't be weird. It's just that it's don't be weird for weird's sake, and be very careful of when you're thinking outside the box, does it serve the purpose of what you're doing? I think outside of the box all the time. like that's what I do. But when I do it, it's because I'm trying to serve a purpose that what currently is happening doesn't serve. And I'm trying to do it in a structured way. It's not that I'm just doing it because I want to do something different. And I think that people get lost. We just see people in production get lost in that conversation. Go ahead, Liberty.
The question says about creating pathways. So I think that has to be intentional. Part of that is from a standpoint of mentorship, and then thinking about developing. We see a lot of economic development programs now where kids who might not necessarily be on a career path can go and work at a company. So just some of those ways, apprenticeships, bringing that back into the industry, I think are two ways that from an intentional standpoint, we can do that.
Yeah, go ahead, Tony.
Just to add to what Liberty just said, also after hours, office hours, different things that are non-traditional can bring a regular person, a guy who doesn't know very much about video production, to being able to do a show.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Sky.
The concept that video production is a team sport. And so again, in storytelling, you're always looking at something that is going to get in the way of moving the story forward. And so I think what I'm hearing is the definition of weird might detract or distract the movement, the forward movement of a production. So how to be a part of the team supporting the forward movement, I think, is what I'm understanding and hearing here.
Yeah, and the I guess what I've spent a lot of time. I got into the industry in a non-traditional way, so that's and so I basically, if you're going to do that, you just have to know that if you're going to be non-traditional, there's no roads, and so we're trying to create roads, but I got in by living in a basement, eating rice, and working for years and years and years at 80, 100 hours a week, 2 or 3 years in a row. That, just so you know, like when I say I got in untraditionally, it's because I just didn't go to, I couldn't find a school that taught what I wanted to learn, and I couldn't afford it when I did. So I just worked really hard. And then now that I've gotten there, I've spent the last 20 years trying to build those pathways that you're talking about. So first with Pixel Core and DV Garage, and then with our school in Rwanda, and now with Office Hours. But the goal is that a lot of folks can't. My goal is always that people can get into this industry without having to go to school. Like, just be clear, like that, like without having to pay for it. I think that this should be something that is almost a right, to be able to communicate on a larger stage. And so that's what's kind of driven what I've been doing here for all these pieces. And so I think that the thing is what's important is you have things that educate people that anybody can get a hold of. That's what our office hours is. We're answering questions and we're pushing through those things. Another thing is for people to find a way to congregate, so they can start finding each other, and then provide things that people can do where they can learn, they can meet other people and get better at what they do, improve their skills over time, which is what we're doing with Office Hours 2.0 and a lot of the other shows. And so the goal is that, and we've already seen a lot of people here hiring each other, and figuring it out and finding those things. And so I think that's always our goal, on this process is to build places to do it. Now, people have to, what it does require is people being able to structure themselves, as opposed to having, a structure like you would have in school. They have to actually show up and do it, and know that their effort a lot of times is in the process is they get a free education, not that they're, like that's what they do there. And that's only for a certain kind of person. And so so this pathway isn't for everyone, but that's what this is built for, is to provide a non-traditional pathway into the industry. And potentially, instead of trying to get into the old industry, build a new industry that didn't exist before, because disruption is the easiest way to create opportunity. Next question.
Rodrigo Munoz from Stockholm in Sweden says a client's PL blamed the lag of a live show, including ATEM Mini Pro, to me connecting too many cameras to the ATEM, causing lots of lag. It was a Teams meeting with 100 plus people on a 6 megabit per second upline. Should I sue them to pay my invoice?
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
So this really depends on if you have any type of contract or statement of work, and especially inside of that contract or statement of work, you talk about things like force majeure that are beyond your control. When I have this happen to me, the one thing that I do is I'm very persistent. If I send an invoice, I send a second invoice, I send a third invoice. I do due diligence before I even think about suing, and suing is absolutely the last thing you want to do. So other things that I've done is I've offered them saying, okay, we had a problem with this. Let's just have I'll give you a kind of a credit towards the next one, and keep that dialogue going before, once again, saying the word sue. Don't even think about that until you absolutely have to, and then go from there. And then just check all your equipment, make sure that that what you did was what you did and what you promised them.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, you could explain to them, they don't sound very technical, that the maximum amount of delay that an ATEM Mini Pro has, which only has 4 inputs, would be about 80 milliseconds. And that's imperceptible by a human being. So explain to them that you're not in charge of the internet. And do as Jeffrey says, bill them once, bill them twice, then turn them over to collections.
Go ahead, Paul. Go ahead, Paul. Can't hear you, Paul.
Even if you're justified in suing them, don't sue them. I mean, it's really hard. You got to pay a lawyer. It takes a long time. It's not a good idea to sue people in general, unless you have like a super good reason. And I don't think the ATEM causes lags like Courtney was saying. I think that's, the internet or some other outside factor. Don't sue them.
Go ahead, Kenneth.
Well, the thing is, if you're getting blamed for something that you know is obviously not your fault, that means the person who's blaming you about that doesn't understand fundamentally what it is that you do. And that's an issue. And I wouldn't sue them until you decide that you don't want to do any more business with that client or any client that client knows, because you will immediately develop a reputation. And that's opportunity cost. You don't want to spend that money.
Go ahead, Nigel.
Yeah, that was starting to go where I would go, which is it depends how much of your revenue this is. It depends how valuable the client is. It depends on lots of things, but think about one big thought. Is it worth the time and effort, or will you lose more money chasing this than you would getting from it? And you've just got to look at the opportunity cost to set around that.
Yeah, it's complicated when a show doesn't work. like that's why a lot of us will be super, like people like me will be super conservative about what we say we can do, and I'll turn down a lot of jobs because I think that that's a dangerous job to do. I'll just I don't think that, and I'll look at a client and say, well, this doesn't look structured. I don't think I'm gonna get into it, because when things go sideways, you don't know. Like with what I'm reading this email, it could have been you. 6 megabits up, you can't connect more than one person. You couldn't connect in a line because the upstream will be problematic, because what happens is that even though you're pulling down ones, if you have a return send into that Teams, if you have more than one return going back up with a 6 meg line, it's going to damage the reflector. So the reflector has to now resync that slow. So I'm not clear. It's not it's not on your side. So if you had a 6 meg line, we wouldn't, if we had. You need 10 megs per connection. So if you're not doing that, like when we do it on ours, we have 20 here, but I've got, 2 1 gig connections. I think they're limited to 500 or something for some reason, but I got a lot of headroom. But so when you start doing these, I'm not totally clear. And again, when something goes wrong, you want to be really careful of suing, because it just can unwrap really, really fast. And when things go perfectly and you don't get paid, that's a different problem. But when things go sideways, in the past, we've usually, looked for a way to quietly give people credit or step out of it if something didn't work, because it's a dangerous place to be. Next question.
Liberty White from Atlanta, Georgia says, my ATEM Mini Pro is powered on and off via a surge protector. Lately, when connecting to Zoom, it doesn't see the camera without me disconnecting the cord from the back of the ATEM. Thoughts?
Go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, there's a number of issues you got to deal with here. First is that Blackmagic design doesn't like putting power switches on anything. That's the first problem. The other is your surge protector might have a few extra cycles of power that stays on, so you may not turn the surge protector on and off long enough to equal the same effect you get by removing the power cable on your ATEM Mini and do a count of 3. So I don't think all the power is drained out of the system, so it can reset some of those values by any other method than just pulling the plug on the back of the ATEM or using your surge protector and give it a count to 3.
Go ahead, Tony.
I would echo everything that Mitchell just said. Also, I think you should check the HDMI cables. They may look fine, but that might be where the issue is.
Good, Paul.
Yeah, I don't like the connector on my ATEM Mini. You got to unscrew it and screw it back in. And I don't like the idea of a surge protector where you have a hard switch where you turn it on and off. I am going to try hooking up a Wise switch to the ATEM Mini and see if that works. I don't know if it's going to work or not, but I'm going to try it so that I can turn it on and off in software without having to touch any kind of switch or hardware. I don't know if it'll work, Liberty. I'll let you know if it works. Okay.
Good. Bill?
For surge protectors, I think of them as capacitors. So I leave them on all the time, and I would put a hardware switch between the surge suppressor and the device.
And Liberty, you're just turning you're using that to turn everything off often?
Correct. Yes.
I can tell you the ATEM doesn't like that. like the ATEM, like it's you're gonna continue to have anomalies. Turning your ATEM on and off all the time is gonna make it less stable. Like it just doesn't like to be. Mine's on all the time. Like it's just and I know that there's a little bit of a draw there, but I would turn the light. It's funny. What takes the draw down on your ATEM is in the settings, turning the LED, the lights underneath the buttons down. It actually cuts the draw in half. So, but I know that it uses up some energy. Now, I admit that I use mine so much throughout the day that doesn't make as much sense for me to turn it off. But I don't turn mine off because a lot of electronics they will work better if they're just left alone. So turning them, there's definitely things that are built to turn on and off, like TVs and everything else, but our electronics that do our signals don't like to be turned off if they don't have to be, and so if you want kind of a stable system, I would get a solar.
If it's just at the end of the day, like that's like it's on the entire time, and it's just like, okay, power everything down. So even that is okay. I wouldn't if I didn't have to. I think that you'll just see less anomalies if you leave it on. Yeah. Next question.
James Hughes from Yorba Linda says, high school teacher using an M1 Mac Mini with a Blue Yeti microphone to record flipped classroom lessons at home. Adding a Cintiq 16 and ATEM Mini Pro plus my 2018 iPad Pro for features like telestrator and over-the-shoulder or dock camera. What cables or other items will be needed?
Go, Jeffrey.
That's really going to depend on who's actually going to be controlling the whole thing. If you're setting it up for the teacher to do all the control and all the work, then I would highly suggest adding a Stream Deck into play there. That way you're able to do that. If somebody else is going to be running it, then just make sure that you have all your cables going on here. And I will say this is where a lot of educators are really liking the e-glass over doing any type of telestration, because then they have it right in front of them. It still feels like the chalkboard, dry erase board type situation, and then they have everything right in front of them. They can even bring in documents through the software on e-glass.
I'll have to argue with Jeffrey on the e-glass. I think it's just a horrible idea. Anyway, I know educators like it, but I think they just don't understand telestrators, and that's the only reason you'd use e-glass. Because the thing is that with e-glass, you're it's in front of you. With a telestrator, it's everything that you have, everything that you can feed in is there. Now, I will say that I would not get the Cintiq 616. It's more expensive than the one. So the Wacom one is both less expensive and better for the telestrator. And that's what I use. And I was going to show you this. So 5. So the thing I like also is, my iPad is over here. So I have this on ARM. So this is the Huano ARM or something like that. And basically now I can draw. This is going to be very meta because I'm drawing into a, that's kind of fun. Anyway, so this is what I have here, this Wacom one. The arms are nice because you can kind of move it to where you want it. And so you can kind of get that there. It's going to make everybody dizzy if I keep on doing that. And then I have this, and I can feed this back into the switcher as well. And I can kind of move them to where I want them to go. Oops, I hit the wrong button. And so that is, and then I just have the button that makes it go away. So and then I put Velcro on here so I never lose the pen. Otherwise I lose the pen all the time. Anyway, so I would highly recommend, that setup. It's worked really well for me. I've used some version of that for the last 10 years. And once you get used to a telestrator, you just see, I don't even, I don't know how to have meetings without my telestrator because I can draw on it all the time. And again, everything you put into the switcher is now available to you, and you can keep looking up and talking to people. I just think that this would drive me crazy, to do it all the time. And again, I, as someone who's used a telestrator for a decade, it's life-changing, for important meetings. Next question.
James Hughes from Yorba Linda is back with a question. Using a tutorial, I built a webcam using a Raspberry Pi Zero and a high-definition camera. When I upgraded the OS to Monterey, it stopped working. Connected to my 2016 MacBook Pro on Big Sur, and it works fine. Any ideas to make it work on Monterey again?
Go, Jason.
Every version of Mac OS kind of cranks the screws down a little bit more with respect to things that can mess with your privacy. In this case, I don't think it's anything you did or can do to fix it. I think it has to do with the default Raspberry Pi software that you're loading, which doesn't conform to something that Monterey requires.
Yeah, I think it's a certificate issue that it sees an other device that's more than just a camera connected to it, and it's not going to let it go through. So, and I think that this is part of I think Jason's right. It's part of the security protocols. I think the only way you're going to get that to work is you might be able to hack it where there's a script to turn off that. I think that the script that turns off the little red dot may actually make it work. So maybe someone can put it in here, but there's a GitHub command or a code that will turn off the red dot in the second screen when you have a video connected. I think that when you turn that off, you're turning a bunch of security off, and that script that turns that red dot off may actually turn off, maybe allow your Raspberry Pi to work again. So that'd be the one thing I would look at. Next question.
Simon Ray from Shrewsbury in the UK says the Panasonic GH6 was released within the last 24 hours. Has anyone seen details of this camera being able to shade remotely? Does anyone know of any other non-Blackmagic cameras that can be shaded remotely?
Go ahead, Paul. I can't hear you.
Yeah, basically, it doesn't have shading. And if you want to really find out about this camera, what it really does, look at dpreview.com. There is no better review than that.
Yeah, go ahead, John.
Yeah, I think that really comes into professional grade where you actually have hardware tied to the camera where you can remotely paint the picture for those. That's really, the Blackmagic really brings that consumer grade, and no one else has really stepped in that lane yet.
Yeah, the advantage Blackmagic has is they have the whole pipeline. I mean, that's the thing that when you're buying outside of Blackmagic that you have to fight up against, is that they have hardware that will talk to it. They have software that will shade it, that will finish it for you. It's that kind of whole pipeline that you're buying against, and I think that's what makes it hard. It's making it harder and harder for all these camera manufacturers. That Blackmagic keeps getting better at what they're doing and keeps tying everything in tighter. Next question.
Jonas Dautel from Stuttgart says, with current geopolitical instabilities, how are you prepping or ensuring that your workflows don't get affected by it? Like, for example, software not being allowed to be used, etc.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Yes, unless you're, in the firing line of one of the countries, I would say that your biggest risk is from a cyber attack based on the countries. And if you're using social media of any kind to stream, I would avoid that or rearrange your streaming potential for using Facebook or one of the popular social media sites that would likely be hit by some type of cyber attack.
You go, Jeffrey.
There's always a good backup somewhere. I think about the streaming softwares, the Wirecast, the vMix, the eCams, because those are all on some sort of model where they have to ping back to a server to say that that license is still valid. And at any point, that server could go down, and all of a sudden, you could be definitely hurting when you're doing things. I do have hardware backups to do what I need to do minimally if my software ends up falling down from there.
Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, we just all might have to fire up our ham radios. So you all get your licenses.
There you go.
And let's get on the air.
Did it. I go, Bill.
Morse code, that'd be fun. I think that to a certain degree you can protect, and you should plan ahead and think about what if this happens? What if that happens? What are the pathways through my income stream that could get interrupted by anything, whether it's local power outages to force majeure active wars and things like that around the world. But at some point you can't control them all, and you just have to accept that there's a certain amount of risk in this, which is why people do rainy day funds and things like that. So if there's a period of time when you have to go through with an interruption of what you do, you just got to make it happen. And it's happened to me a couple of times in my career, and I've managed to make it through.
Farming. That's all I'm going to say. Next question.
Hasmuk in Cape Town is using a ATEM as a webcam. Is there a way to customize the webcam name instead of Blackmagic Design _MJPEG Open DML, 1920 by 1080 _30.00 FPS, which has to be entered into Companion?
Go ahead, Jason.
Not that I know of. With the Duo 2, it gets even worse. If you get the Duo 2, you get this whole insane list that is every single resolution and every single input. So no, I don't think so. I think that's just how it works.
I feel like there is some way to do that, and I just don't know what it is. Like I know that I've worked on stuff that didn't have to type that name in, so I'm not sure, but it's some kind of reference. Yeah, I don't know. Next question.
Andy Kokendorfer from Viera, Florida asks, which restreaming or reflector service do you think is the most reliable?
Go, Jason.
One you set up yourself, but I use restream.io, and 99 out of 100 times it works just fine. I have seen it make mistakes in the past, but it's pretty good.
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Yeah, for me, for the price, I do restream.io as well. The one thing that I chose that over StreamYard one was because of the fact that I was doing a 24/7 stream. And at the time, StreamYard, I don't know if this has changed or not, but at the time, StreamYard only did a certain amount of time, a data cap, and so that wouldn't have helped me there.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, they've been really nice about getting things done, like my LinkedIn Live and things like that.
Go ahead, John.
I use Resi, which is a platform tied with some specific hardware. It allows for additional buffering, so you get a much smoother experience, especially over maybe not clean internet lines.
Good, Paul.
Yeah, at the risk of sounding like an echo chamber, I'll second and third the restream.io. I just don't use it enough. I'm not getting my money's worth out of it.
I would say most reliable is AWS. So if you're doing a restream, I mean, so that to answer the question that was specifically asked, the most reliable is to roll your own in AWS, and then it just doesn't have as many features, and it may cost more if you do a lot of it. But I think it would probably the most reliable setup is you'll have the most control. Next question.
Tim Mann from Melbourne, Australia asks, what are the panel using for office hours comms, and what is the signal flow to your in-ears?
Stefan?
Yeah, at first we are using a software called Unity to organize our comms in the background. This is one part. And my signal chain, it just takes the signal from the Mac back into my MixPre 6, and from there over these little Rode wireless goes into my ears.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Well, I had a big problem with this. We are using Unity comms, and I found that when my main Zoom computer, which I did run the Unity comms app on, switched to Windows 11, it would crash about once per Zoom session completely, having to reboot the entire computer. So I had to move it to a separate computer and feed it in and not use the USB bus as a form of getting audio in. So I'm coming out of an earphone out of a second HP touchpad, touch computer, tablet, and that feeds into my mixer, and so I can hear it in my single in-ear earpiece through an analog connection.
Go ahead, Mitchell.
Unity on a M1 Mac. I'm in the process of using a Studio Technology switch, which allows me to have two Dante enabled outputs from the mic channel to go into one of these little guys. This will in turn plug into my M1 Mac through the USB-C and allow me to route the audio where it needs to go. And the problem I have right now is that I'm using the same connection from my ATEM, and it's sending my voice and the panel audio through, which drives the guys back in the back end crazy.
Go ahead, Bill.
So I'm using a system that Mickey Macacor, our dear friend who is an audio wizard, helped me put together. Because I am using the Universal Audio Apollo Solo, I have a mic chain that goes into something that has multi-channels that is also connected to the Universe software that runs that. And we had to use Loopback, which is a Rogue Amoeba piece of software, to fold my talkback system into my in-ear monitors without making, I'm not sure I could have done it in anywhere near the amount of time. He took him about 10 minutes to help me through that. Would have taken me probably 2 weeks to get it straight.
We like to call that Mickey magic.
Absolutely.
Little magic dust. Next question.
Chris Widener from Lafayette, Indiana says a Zoom Room controller on iPad can now function as a Zoom Room itself. Would this give the video bump of the standard Zoom Room on PC?
I don't think we've tested it yet. It seems like it should do that, but it's untested. So hopefully maybe we can do that in after hours. Next question.
Gabriel Ung from Malaysia says, Alex, it's amazing to see some of the quality of guest speakers coming in for the second hour. What are some points to keep in mind when reaching out to potential guests, and what do you tell them about office hours to get them interested?
Go ahead, Sky.
We have a very large group of very curious people and that understand a lot of things about video and audio production. But when I bring guests, I always bring them with support, because they've got talent and ability and something to say, they may not be able to do the complete infrastructure of cameras and lighting and microphones. So if I'm offering a guest, A, do they have a personality? And then B, do they have something to, well, A, do they have something to say? B, do they have a personality for television? And C, how can I support them with their infrastructure?
Yeah, go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, officehours.global, the website, has a couple of pages that tell a pretty concise summary of what office hours is all about. And if they're not too busy, a lot of people are too busy. Like when I brought Hugh Forrest from South by on here, he's a busy guy, so he can't really prep. But if they're not too busy, then have them prep. Prep them in a session, take them and bring them on to an office hours session before their office hours session and kind of initiate them into the fold.
Yeah, I mean, usually what happens is I send them a YouTube link. So I oftentimes will send them a place that they can register to office hours, so that they can just see what it looks like and decide whether they like it or not. I explained that there's probably, we have about, across all our mailing lists, we hit about 8,000 people, about almost 4,500 on a daily basis. And so a lot of people just want to show, we've had some people that just show up just so they get in that email in the morning. So, just so they have a link in the email. The rest of it is gravy from their perspective. I explained that, it's a really focused and intelligent group that's going to ask you a lot of great questions about your product. And it's going to be seen by a lot of people on YouTube and so on and so forth. And it's a pretty easy, for me, it's a pretty easy conversation to have, because I used to speak at user groups that were a lot smaller. So this is like a really big user group every day, and so for most folks, especially because they don't have to travel anywhere to get to it and they can just come in and answer questions, anybody who really understands marketing to a technical audience understands the ROI of having the conversations in office hours. And so if they don't understand that, then I just know that they're probably not our type. So I definitely invite lots of people that don't show up. And then the ones that do are usually us, the more us than otherwise. Next question.
The next question is from Dennis Champion Walker in Mansfield in the UK. What HomeKit compatible smart heating control system would the panel recommend?
Dennis, do you want to outline that a little bit?
Yep. So when we moved into our new house, the boiler was dripping a bit, and it's got worse and worse to the point that we need to replace it. Our plumber recommended using a Nest system, but that isn't directly compatible with HomeKit. You can make it compatible through a home bridge, but I just wanted to see what else the panel might recommend.
There you go, John.
You stole part of my story. Nest gets all of the press, doesn't it? So I went down this pathway with HomeKit as well, and I liked the Honeywell the best. However, they were out at Home Depot, and my guy was replacing my heat pump outside. I ended up with the Sensi, which is also highly regarded by iMore. And then the iPhone app works really, really well as well. So I use the Sensi by Emerson.
You go ahead, Nigel.
Yeah, I think you have to be really clear what you want to manage, because not all of these devices manage particularly unusual to fan multi-systems. So write down what you've got. I would take a picture of the cables under the current one you've got so you can compare it to the installation manual. Then ask yourself, how many rooms do you want sensors in? Because the remote sensors will be different by unit, and I find those incredibly useful. When you've done all of that, I would go with the Ecobee. I would tell you that the Google has a habit of changing the software every other week on its Nest system. So whatever you install, turn off automatic updates, because what goes wrong in most smart homes are automatic updates, which completely confuse the whole system.
Go ahead, Jason.
+1 on the Ecobee and -1 on the Nest. I think that's the right way to go.
Go ahead, Mitchell.
I think the Nest is great. I've used it for 5 years. I'm on my second version, had zero problems with it. It's very convenient that you can talk to it via Google. It works like a charm. I'm telling you, it's the way to go.
I'm planning to use Isadora myself. Next question.
Next question is from Eddie Scott in Mission Viejo in California. I have a chance to pick up a Canon EOS M50 Mark II mirrorless DSLR camera with 15 to 45 millimeter STM lens for a reasonable price. What are the panel's thoughts on this camera?
Courtney?
Well, you're looking at it right now because I got one a while back, and I've been very happy with it. Carl Osmundson recommended it. The only thing, if you're ordering one to use it as a webcam, you might make sure you order one of these things, which is a AC power plug with a dummy battery in it, so you can feed AC into it and run it continuously without having to use its internal batteries. That's its really main downfall. It doesn't have an external DC input on it, but it does a pretty good job. It's handling, pretty well the changing light situation in this room, which starts out in darkness and comes to the bright sunlight coming through a window, which you see now. And it tries to change the color balance as that color temperature changes from tungsten to orange sunrise to blue daylight throughout this show. So it does an admirable job of adjusting color temperature on the fly and tracking my face and doing focus.
Go ahead, Sky, real quick.
Yes, you're buying into a system. If you don't have any other cameras, you're now buying into a Canon system. So learn it, own it, practice it, get comfortable with it before you move on to something else. And again, a DP told me once, you're buying a lens. Sorry, you're marrying a lens, but you're dating the camera. Yeah. So your lens will be able to go forward with you in the future.
You go, Jason, real quick.
Depending upon which dummy battery you buy, the Canon might flash up a "this is not an official Canon" thing. Just click OK. You'll be fine.
Next question.
Liberty White from Atlanta, Georgia says, last night on Conversations with Tony Mobley, the tables were turned and Tony was interviewed by Catherine Harrop. Tony, what was the experience like for you?
I go, Tony.
So I was interviewed last night by an office hour widow. And by that, I mean, like so many of us, our spouses are watching or felt that they have lost a connection with their husbands. And fortunately for me, Catherine got a chance to look over George's shoulder, and she loved what Office Hours was doing. And George can really talk about it better than I can. But it was a fantastic experience in that I think Catherine did a masterful job. And being a journalist and broadcaster for over 35 years in Canada didn't hurt any either. And so it was a great experience. And I, again, encourage everyone who is doing a show or thinking about doing a show to look at the conversation, because she did a great job.
Awesome. Next question.
The next question comes from Eduardo Augustine in Panama. What would be a good competitor for the wireless Rode Go 2? Is there a white dual kit?
Go ahead, Nigel.
Yeah, I don't know, Eduardo, whether you have a problem getting those in Panama, but I can tell you I have been through lots of different things that cost slightly less money, and they are not as good. So, well, it's not a truly professional system. I think as a semi-professional system, it's really good. And so I would tell you to buy once and cry once, because everything below this just doesn't last.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Well, I don't think they're available just yet, but DJI has announced a competitor for them, which is a dual wireless mic system. And if you look on the internet, you can find many people that had advanced copies of this and tested it out, and they were all they all liked it a whole lot. You can request a stock alert, and it says there at B&H it should be available by March 7th in the United States. I don't know if you can get it in Panama, but they're still not quite out on the market in the U.S. yet. But all things look good. Has better displays, better range, other things than that. And it's very similar to the Go as far as capabilities and charging in the base and so on.
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
With my DJI at CES, DJI Pocket 2 comes with the single wireless option, and that's what I used at CES. The problem is 2.4 gigahertz. When you get into a place like that, it's just way too busy. You step way too far away from the camera, all of a sudden it starts to skip. So you might want to also think about something that'll give you a regular UHF option with multiple frequencies on that. There are a couple companies I can think of offhand. One is called Comica, and the other one's called Movo, and these are going to be step downs, but they do try to mimic some of the top brands like Sony, Sennheiser, and of course DJI.
Saramonic makes a dual channel receiver that's in white. Just in case you're wondering. So, and the Saramonic ones work pretty well as well. I don't know if they're that much better or worse than the Go's, but they make a white set of receivers. So if you're looking for a specific color, that would be it. And Saramonic is probably the closest to the Go as far as price performance. Next question.
Steve Brenneman from Indianapolis says, with Zoom adding some of our favorite software developers, will there be more acquisitions to control the cloud production space? Maybe vMix or Sienna. Could Zoom beat full cloud OH 4.0 to the punch?
Go ahead, John.
I don't think they have to control the cloud production space, but having tools that complement their platform would be very helpful. A few other pieces of the puzzle out there that would make sense to me. Will they beat us to 4.0? No, because it's all about the community.
Go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, I agree with John there, and I also point out that Mix Effects, Adam Tao, was just brought on board at Zoom. There's no reason why they wouldn't continue to build that space, and the good news is that because they're familiar with our community and the way we like to do things, chances are we have a little tiny say in what's going to happen.
Go ahead, Bill.
The other thing that I always have in the back of my mind is that most of these other competing services are part of a larger organization that has different sets of goals. For Microsoft, Teams is a piece of its business, but it's not its business. With Zoom, this is all they do. And not only that, but they've created such a huge global presence in a relatively ridiculously short amount of time that they are flush with any resource they could possibly have to acquire either technologies or people, which I think is more important than the technologies, because if you have the bright brains, you can work around a lot of technical problems. So I don't see anybody breathing down their neck for a long, long time, and I'm going to be interested in watching them. How that compares to office hours, I think Alex had a vision that is very specific and distinct around community, and I think that is going to make what we do here or what people do on this model viable for a long time, no matter what these commercial services do.
Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, I
Real
think
quick.
Zoom's going to try to acquire office hours and make an offer you can't refuse, Alex, and then
It's
you'll
impossible
refuse
now.
it. And then you'll
It's
refuse it.
It's impossible. We're a nonprofit now.
Oh, you're a nonprofit.
So
that's
there's
right.
not really any way to
okay.
take it
I
over.
stand corrected.
Yeah, so that would not happen. But I think that there is I think what we're going to continue to see, or what we hope to see, is a symbiotic relationship between office hours and what Zoom's doing, where they're building things. We're trying to show them what we're doing. Fortunately, there's people who at Zoom who see what we do, and as was mentioned before. So we're blazing the trail in some ways, both in the cloud and with hardware, and doing things that Zoom, and we did this with Hangouts, which is use a bunch of hardware and just make it do the thing we want it to do. Then we'll figure out how to turn that into technology. So if we keep on doing what we're doing with 2.0 and 3.0, we're trying to define what we need out of the system. And I think that Zoom, watching us, if they're smart, and we know that they are, will look at what we're doing and figure out ways to build that into what their offerings. So I think that we're going to benefit. I think I would say there's a 50-50 chance that Office Hours 4.0 is sitting inside of Zoom. I think that's, it may or may not, but I think it could be just using a lot of Zoom tools. If that relationship worked well over the next year and a half or 2 years, it could be using the SDK, to do it, where we're defining how we want all that stuff to work. And everything's kind of pieced into it. But right now we're just doing it the way we're doing it. Next question.
Courtney Gooden from Hollywood, California asks, in Unity Comms, is there a way to add a small beep to the start of each transmission?
Go ahead, John.
Yeah, for private messages, you can enable a beep that will play. You can also enable a beep that will play about every 15 seconds while a message is going on, so you can kind of distinguish where the audio is coming from.
Go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, if you go back to our old CB days, we used to call them birdies. If you key a mic, it makes a sound, and if you want like a Quindar tone there, and Courtney can explain what that is, as long as you're hitting a key, you should be able to fire it off.
He's like, I'm not gonna explain that. Go ahead, Courtney.
Is that something that Klingons use, a Quindar tone? No. Yeah, I was just pointing this out because having a single in-ear monitor and the quality of the comms is so good on Unity Comms, it's difficult to tell where that sound is coming from, whether it's a private line message going to me or if it's somebody's left their mic open in the panel. So that I'll have to look for how to enable that in the comms. I haven't seen it yet.
Next question.
Arthur Kerikas in Toronto asks, how does being a panelist on Office Hours how has being a panelist on Office Hours changed your life or business? Congratulations on the launch of Office Hours 2.0.
Go ahead, Richard.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I would take it in two different ways. How is being part of the community changed, and how is being part of the panel changed? Because being part of the community as well as the panel has been quite night and day from where we were at the beginning of the pandemic as a business, my theater, to where we are now. Keep things really short, the thing I really enjoy is being at home and VPNing into the building and turning on an entire streaming system with 2 buttons.
Go ahead, Nigel. It's great.
Yeah, so I would go the same way, that there's a community benefits, making new friends, learning new things. The thing about the panel that I found is that it's pushed me to do better at what we do here. So I find it a constant competition, not only to keep up, but to do a better job, get closer. And I've reflected that back into our work situation, where the town halls we do when we meet with clients, we put that extra effort in. So it's that's got most. Also, there's a line item in our QuickBooks now for office hours, which is a different problem at home.
And by the way, for our traffic manager, when I start pushing stuff out to get ready for the second hour, you don't need to move it in. It's like whack-a-mole. Go ahead, Mitchell.
I was going to say, I've been evangelizing quality video on Zoom and Teams for ages, and Office Hours provided a great outlet to say, see, look how good it can be. And it's not just me, it's everybody around me. It's a whole community that's pushing for better quality.
Go ahead, Mitchell. I can't hear you, Mitchell.
That was just me doing.
Oh, sorry.
Answer.
Again, for the traffic manager, when I'm, especially at the hour when I'm distracted because I'm trying to move things around. I don't want the traffic manager to take it down because I'm trying to figure out if any questions fit into the 700, and I'm doing that. But it's super important that as soon as someone finishes, to go to the next person because because I'm looking at that. That's my notes. If I'm not clicking on it, go ahead, Sky.
Thank you. Well, I came into this from working in Los Angeles and Hollywood in the television and film world. So my understanding coming into this was content was king because that's what we were doing, creating content. Early days, Alex, you challenged me with, no. Community is king and content is what is the honey that brings us together. And so that is a 180-degree flip in how it changed my life. Now, I've also had the great pleasure of now having lunch, breakfast, and dinner with some of you folks in your own regions. And it's been a joy to, continue to be challenged to be better at a high level on many areas of my life.
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Yeah, the challenge is perfect, but the better part is that I have a place to go to ask questions and get feedback on what I'm doing, how I'm doing things, which is really cool. And of course, also be able to answer the questions. Like the other week, Paul asked about the Mevo Start in the Mac M1s, and it's just something that I haven't worked on in a while. So I kind of got back in there to try and figure out how it works, and so I can be able to answer those questions if they come up. So it's a great relearning experience for a lot of things, and of course, pushing me to new directions.
By the way, for the panelists, I unlocked this question because I realized it's kind of a 700 question as opposed to a thing. So if you want to throw anything in, you can. I think for me, the thing that I noticed a couple weeks ago, or maybe a couple months ago, I lose track of time. But from the time I was about 12 years old, I listened to probably an average of 1 to 2 hours of NPR a day. And I just went within a week after hours started, I haven't heard more than a couple hours of NPR since then. And I thought that was just a real, because now when I want to fill time, that used to be what I drove to, or I'd work to or walk to or whatever. And I just found myself going, no, I'd rather just jump into after hours and listen to it for a while, because there's a whole, it's a bunch of smart people. It's something that I think I mentioned it yesterday. I'm starting to call a conscious community, which is that we're consciously we're diverse in where we live, we're diverse in how we look, we're diverse in our backgrounds, our political, our religion, we're diverse in a lot of things, more than almost anywhere else in the world, but we share a common interest, and we are consciously coming together from all over the world to build that community. And I find that very addicting for me, is to know that I can go somewhere and we get to be passionate and we get to be geeky about it in a safe place. Where it's okay to be excited about connectors, or be excited about how we roll cables, or excited about a sensor, and almost everybody else in our life would roll their eyes like, okay, like I don't need it. I can't talk to my wife about this. Like she's not interested. So the thing is that I think that's a really exciting, having a community where you can be excited about something that is geeky and what you're up to. And there's a whole bunch of other people that you weren't geographically constrained to find those people. They're just everywhere that are interested in that. I think is watching that kind of has really helped me think about a lot of things. And then I learn every day. I still learn. I feel like I'm a lot smarter, by being with this community, because there's just so many smart people in it. Go ahead, Jason.
For the first time in my adult life, and of course it coincided with COVID, but now that I think about it, not really. With the exception of trade shows and, very specific friend circles that I've developed over the years, office hours was the very first time that, I watched an Apple event with people who truly understood the products and where they could be going, as well as I did. And for just a moment, I completely forgot. It was the first one we watched. It was like, right in the worst of the pandemic and the lockdowns, and I completely forgot about it. And it was a completely magnificent experience. So I would say that this has been one of the most rewarding experiences of my adult life.
I thought watching the Super Bowl and only talking about the graphics.
Oh, that was so cool.
So it was so cool. Like, it was just like that we're not bothered with the game or whatever, because I don't watch the Super Bowl unless the Steelers are in it. And so for me to be able to hang out with a bunch of people and get into something that everybody else in my life would roll their eyes over was a ton of fun. Go ahead, Tony.
So I want to say a lot of things, but my wife is working, so I'm just going to say this. This has been a transformative experience, and I am looking forward to continuing to have the opportunity to grow.
Yeah. We've taken a lot of ground, and I think that when we look back 1400, it's going to be a lot different and better. Dennis?
Yeah, it has essentially taken over my life since I joined. I've got involved in lots of different aspects of both office hours and the offshoots of office hours, such as the Belfast method and a variety of festivals that were run through the Accidental Theatre. And the opportunities I've got from joining office hours have been immense. And it's coincided with a sort of quiet period in work as well. So it's filled my time nicely, and it's given me a lot of new skills, which I can then go out and start making money out of, hopefully.
Yeah, it's one of the things that I've often thought about is having somewhere to go when you have downtime, and to continue to grow. Like, the hard part is when you're out of work, you're always afraid that you're going to become, when my company closed, between that and when I started working at 090, about a year, it was a solid year. And I consulted enough to make enough money to get by. But there was these huge tracks of, a month or two that I wouldn't have a ton of work to do. And I just didn't have anywhere to, I didn't have a bunch of other people to be working on stuff. I could have been learning a bunch of new things or whatever. And I did a fair bit of that, but this would have been a lot better. And so when things are slow, what you're always afraid of is that your sword is going to get, dull, that you're not going to know what the newest thing is, and you're not going to, have that edge of what's going on that you get when you're working on it. And I feel like a lot of us have just an incredible edge because we're constantly some of us are working, some of us are not working as much, but we're all constantly talking about it and seeing it in action. Go ahead, Courtney.
A couple of things office hours has done for me. It's been able to alter my sleeping pattern once again. So I used to stay up late and watch the late show.
Stabilized it.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but yeah. Now I get up at 5:30 in the morning, and that's quite unusual for me. But the other thing is it's expanded my horizons and taught me a lot about networking and stuff that I didn't really have the time or inclination to look deeply into. And it's given me a purpose in retirement to buy more equipment, which is always fun.
It's funny because like my wife knows that I have a very hard schedule about this, and like I do not stay up late. I do not like things that would possibly mean that I would stay up late, because I still have to, like, no matter what time I go to bed, I'm still getting up at a certain time. And I've noticed that like if I have to fly somewhere or drive somewhere, it's all based on office hours. So it's like I can do this and then I can leave, and I could fly in the morning, but I'm going to fly in the night before because I have to be able to set up in the hotel. So there's a lot of like, process there that goes around this. So go ahead, Bill.
Well, the overall thing I'm hearing is a ton of us are curious people. That's kind of been a hallmark of our entire lives. And there has been no greater source of satisfaction for the curious than coming here every day, because you don't know what you're going to learn. It's almost all going to be interesting for those of us who have self-selected into this. And I do feel like my ability to understand technology, which is driving the world in many ways, continues to increase incrementally every one of those 600 plus days I've been here. And I would hate to lose this.
Hear, hear. Well said.
I do. I was thinking about it the other day that I kind of feel like if we were all the same age and we were in the same school, we'd be the people that all hung out with each other. We'd be doing the AV and we'd be doing, hanging out the thing, being the social team or whatever. So we would have been, we just are not constrained by when we were born or where we grew up or whatever. We just found each other here. But it is, I do feel like in our own way, we're kind of all peas in a pod. Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, the next question in the queue is the guys thanking us for getting up early. I want to thank you, Alex, and all the people on the West Coast for getting up 2 hours earlier than I do. And I learn a tremendous amount on office hours. And it's not so much what I learned, but the potential for learning even more and learning to focus even more and take full advantage of it, because there's so much potential there. And I really enjoy the impromptu after hours events like the one Courtney had the other day, where he talked about the most dangerous movie ever made, where he encountered lions and tigers and all kinds of stuff. Those are learning moments also. So thanks, Courtney, for that great show you did.
Yeah, we have to schedule another one of those, by the way, because that was just kind of happened without barely with me even knowing it. So anyway, we'll do another one. All I can say is that getting up early and doing this with everybody is effortless for me. Like, it just really is not a thing, for me to do it, and I don't know how that happened. Like, I'm not that regular. I like to do things in order, but I'm not usually that persistent in 700 times. But it really hasn't been hard at all, for me to do it. Go ahead, John.
As a relative newbie to this whole thing, I really appreciate how much it's really stretched me creatively when I'm thinking about all the stuff that I'm doing now for work and things. I never really paid attention to video. I'm more of an audio guy, musician at heart, and then front of house kind of man. So seeing all the different things, and now purchasing lights and working on my color in my background and all this other stuff that I've never really paid attention to, buying lenses for cameras that I didn't own 6 months ago. So
more expensive, friends.
Yeah. It's just one thing to another. Like music is also expensive, right? The more you get into it, the more you're going to buy. I think Alex, you've spoken about that in the past. So I just really think it goes into what is a new passion? What can you keep learning and growing from? And this is just rounding out my tech skills when it comes to production. So I really appreciate it.
I do think that the network that we've built among each other, I just know that I think I seem so much smarter to my clients than I actually am, because I Discord, I just ask someone, what should I do here? And how should I make this work? And I'm trying to figure this thing out. And it's like at my fingertips, I have somebody who I know is an expert at that thing. And it saves me so much time of trying to read manuals and go aimlessly through things and try to find something on Reddit that's going to explain this. And instead, I can just call the person who does this all the time, and they'll just explain the way to do it, and then you move on. Go ahead, Liberty.
I think a couple of things Bill touched on, like the curiosity part of it, like just being able to come to a place, like if I'm working on something and I think about it, that's like, oh, I wonder if that's possible. Oh, let me just hop over, let me put this question in Mukana or whatnot. And just the idea of like, if you can think it, there's actually like 5 or 6 more steps that can be done. And just the idea of possibility, that's been a big thing for me. And then also, I think part of even getting the opportunity to host and hosting consistently is people reach out to me on social. Like there was a young lady maybe a month or 2 ago who made a comment, and then I DM'd her and just saying, hey, you should come on, because she's in audio and we don't necessarily see a lot of women in audio. So just I think the change for me, or the impact, is like there are people watching and waiting for them to, like, inviting them in, and just the impact of just showing up. Like we all touch so many lives just because we show up.
No, absolutely. Go ahead, Jason, real quick.
Real quick, I just wanted to highlight another use and way that it's changed things. About a month ago, I asked about a teleprompter and cue cards for a dentist. I shot that on Saturday, and eventually, maybe like 3 days or so before the shoot, the client watched my recording of office hours, and I said, okay, guy 1 is this resume, guy 2 is this resume, guy 3 is this resume. Reading Rainbow, you don't have to take my word for it. Listen to these guys. He used a teleprompter.
Very good. All right, let's go to the next question.
The next question is from Gavin Roberts in Chester. And he says, Alex, this is the first time I've tuned in around 13 months. Shout out to all of you for waking up and putting on a fantastic show with many of the OG faces still here.
Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, I already said it. I mean, kudos to you guys who get up 2 hours earlier than I do.
Yeah, it's come a long way in 13 months. 13 months. I was doing the math. I was like, that was a long time ago. So so it's and I think that the next 13 months will be fun too. Next question.
Next question is from TJ Asher in Minneapolis, Minnesota. 700. What? Are you kidding me? How many of the 700 have you been part of? What are some brief thoughts from the panelists on reaching this milestone?
Go ahead, Bill.
So I've probably done a bit over 600 of them for two reasons. Number one, there were some times when I had to chunk out for a month for a gig or something like that, or at least a few weeks. But also, I made a pact with my wife. I give office hours Monday through Friday. She gets Saturday and Sunday, so we can have morning time together. And I learned early that if your business and your wife aren't compatible, whatever you're doing, does not bode well for long-term relationships.
Go ahead, John.
You got to love this moray. I think Jason and I are part of the OG crowd that are still around. I shared this with Alex a while back. To me, it was interesting to see when we would pass TWiT and when we would pass Mac Break Weekly, which happens this year. June 26th, we come equal with Mac Break Weekly, and September 1st, we catch up to TWiT in total episodes.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, most of it's been said, but I thought we should have little patches that say the 700 Club, but then we don't talk about religion, and people would get the wrong idea that we're equipment evangelists. Okay,
exactly. Go ahead, Sky.
I still have my skull candies, the archive of a thing, because it's been a great 600 plus for me at least, and joy to wake up early and be listened, as well as earning the opportunity to be your friends. Thank you,
Jason.
My rule with my girlfriend is that if I'm on office hours for maybe 2 or more times a week, I end up having to do extra chores. So generally it's 2 or 3 times a week.
Go ahead, Tony.
I don't know how long I've been on, but I will say that I think that office hours has had an impact on me healing from cancer. And I believe that it came at the right time for me in my journey.
That's great. Stefan?
Yeah, well, my story is about my wife too. So I've been here in the panel for about, let's say, 15 times, 20 times, and several times behind the scenes. And when I say I go to my friends, or I meet my friends at office hours, she always asks, are you in it or are you just watching them? And every time I say I'm in it, all the things go out of my way.
That doesn't work for me. I keep on trying to say, can't talk to me right now. I'm in front of hundreds of people here. We can't talk. I can't find the keys. Anyway, yeah, I think I'm like 670. I think is about my range there, and so but it's been great to have other people able to take over and run it. And I think that's the interesting thing, is that every week we're becoming more and more distributed, away from anything where anything could happen and we could keep on going, so I think it's exciting. All right, let's go to the next question.
Douglas Carmichael asks, where do you see office hours going in the next 3, 5, or even 10 years?
All right, go ahead, John.
For me, from a video aspect, I think that all the screen share stuff that we do, I would expect to see that move into a Stream Voodoo or something where the producers or whoever's doing switching, managing that content would have full control of how that's being displayed versus us kind of managing that. I don't know. Alex, thoughts?
Yeah, it's probably 6 months. Go ahead, Liberty.
I see it more so along the community side. So just having more activity in Africa or in the islands, and just seeing more of those communities pop up and engaging.
Yeah, Nigel.
Yeah, I think in 3 or 5 years, maybe 5 years, office hours won't be a unique way of doing things. It's going to become a way that most communities work, and especially specialist communities in specific subjects where people collaborate and they communicate. And I think we'll see the technology in the home, the technology in the computer continually change and transform to make that easier to do.
Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
I agree with Nigel, and particularly in this respect, I think since we have ties into Foremost Office Hours being up in Zoom and things like that, that the tools out there for the general public to be able to do shows more like Office Hours will continue to grow. But it's not just the tools. There's so many soft skills, learning how to interview, learning how to respond, learning how to follow time, that only a very small niche of people at the top of the broadcast industry were schooled and had enough practice to improve. And yet this format, as it distributes out, allows many more people to become better at those soft skills. And so I think there's going to be a spread of that. The other thing, I just really quickly, time. We are here in the U.S. on the West Coast early in the morning, but there are other people who still can't see us. So as it spreads out, more people around the world should be able to take advantage because different shows will be starting in different time zones. And so this could become easily a global phenomenon.
Go ahead, Stefan.
Yeah, I think the way we communicate in office hours will be the blueprint of a lot of spin-offs in a lot of different topics. And there will be a time where people will ask us, where does this kind of doing things come from? And then we will say it's office hours. This was the blueprint.
Yeah. Sky.
Well, education is what brought me into this, was my attractant into this group of people, to how do we help support educators. And consequently, the technology of it, as we know in Moore's Law, things change so rapidly and so quickly. So my guess, in 3 years, technology will not be the main focus. I think it's the attitude of communication and helping support one another. I think that's world changing.
Go ahead, Paul.
5 years, the moon, 10 years, Mars. No, I would say that globally, office hours will have a much better global reach, and there'll be many more nationalities and much more diversity. And the name of the website is extremely appropriate, Office Hours Global.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, that's something we can aspire to. Preto can put up the Office Hours satellite, and we can go worldwide easily with our own network.
I mean, if SpaceX can do it, we can do it. We can get them up there. I think that when we think about where we could go, who knows what's going to happen, but where we could go is really, again, 24/7, having something like office hours. So there's Q&A. We may have a general discussion like we have now, but then the second hour becomes the third hour and the fourth hour and the fifth hour of different subject matters that we want to talk about those weeks around this subject. But of course, then, as was stated before, this could branch off into cars and F1 and gardening and cooking and knitting and violins, or all kinds of things where people are talking about those things. And so what we're building is I think that everyone here has their own individual, we all share an interest in media and virtual production, but we also have a whole bunch of our own interests that are different. And I think that that's where many of us are already doing. Lois is doing a thing on birding, because she's taking what we did here and figure, the infrastructure that we built, and taking her own interest and building that into something else. And we've done that with cooking, and we've done with other things. And so I think these are all seeds, the Belfast method and the Mobley process, or all these other, seeds of us people starting to take what we're doing and branching out. And I think we'll just see a lot more of that. And again, the Office Hours 2.0 team is so important because they're drawing that blueprint in real time, and so it's a really fascinating thing, and that as we keep on going down that path, and I think that as we if we can keep on growing, and we can get to the point where we can afford to do things like satellite distribution and distribution over a lot of different places, I do think that the community gets pretty big, and then we have those folks that are learning how to do it with 2.0 and other shows that we're doing, and then take it on and do their own thing, and you go down that path. So I think that there's just an immense connection that we can build over time. And the tools are only going to get better. We're going to get better at using the hardware tools, and then we're going to use more software tools, and then we're going to go into the cloud. And so all these things will become easier and easier. 10 years from now, people are just going to light it up, and it's all going to be a software interface, and it's all going to go out to everybody, and everyone's going to get notified, and it's all going to pull together. And, so I think that there's a lot there. that we can all do together. So it's going to be next a couple of years. I also want to, take what we're learning with like the Belfast method and what we're doing in San Rafael, and eventually have physical places that we can congregate. So a lot of us enjoy being around each other. Well, what if there were studios all over the world that we could shoot content with, and put it together, and getting in just as an active member would be what it takes to have access to the space, and then we could have spaces in a lot of different places, and then we could be learning by watching ourselves do the thing, and learning from it. So there could be a lot of people learning from the folks that are doing those spaces. And it could be a place where, again, that we keep on opening up access for people to tell their stories, without necessarily having the money that you would traditionally need to do that. So I think that's something I've been trying to do for a long time. So we're slowly sneaking up on that possibility. So next question.
Asmuk from Cape Town says, now that office hours is 700, there are many OGs we have not seen for a while. Maybe acknowledge them and remember Mike A for being a part of making what office hours is today. Do we know what some of them are up to now?
Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, Mike definitely was a great contributor to office hours. He followed the show really closely, and he even archived the transcripts every day, And then as far as OGs, old timers that were here, maybe you could have an old timers game like they do at UT, where all the Roger Clemens and all the old players come back and play a game for old time's sake.
But what game would we play?
And who was that guy in Budapest who worked on Blade Runner? Remember him?
I think I don't think he worked on Blade Runner, but he did one on the newer one. I think that he's working on a film. When you get into a film production, you disappear for a long time because you're now not allowed to talk about anything. John?
Paul, you read my mind. I was just going to tell everybody about Chris. I stay in touch with Chris. First of all, a couple of thoughts. Our attrition isn't any more significant. It's actually better than most online communities that I keep track of. You should see the attrition rate on Clubhouse. It's through the roof. It's crazy. They're dying fast. Chris Summers, I just talked to him last week. Shadow in the Bone season 2, and he's doing work on Jack Ryan. And there's a bunch of other people, and they're still bouncing around. I talked to Phil Langer last week. A lot of the other guys are still around. They listen to us.
Yeah, Bill.
I just wanted to say that particularly about Mike, because I had been only here a couple of months, and I knew Mike a little bit, but not a lot. But he was here on his last day or so on the planet, and literally nobody expected what was going to happen. We literally said goodbye and come back to the panel quick, and then we got the word that he had passed away. That moment was the moment I realized how powerful office hours can be in terms of connection, because I felt real loss of somebody that I didn't know in the real world, but I truly had felt like I got to know him a little bit through office hours. And that was profound for me.
Yeah. And we've had a couple others that have not been quite as connected to us past, with, in office hours. And that'll be a continuing thing, that we're going to have, the transitions of life, because we're hanging out with each other. There's not many communities where we hang out so much with each other. So I think that it's going to be a thing that we'll constantly be part of. Go ahead, Tony.
I am here because of Mike Andrews. In the early days, I was in horrible shape. I looked terrible. I sounded bad. I looked bad. All of those things were going on. And I will say that as a person who struggled with the fact that I looked as bad as I did, I was able to hang on because Mike encouraged me. He reached out to me, and he never let me forget that I could make a contribution.
That's great. Courtney.
Yeah, ditto for the Mike Andrews. Kudos. He was instrumental in a lot of the routines and things that happened here on office hours. And I'd like to say I miss the other person that part of part of our interfaces are named after Chris Fenwick. I thought he was going to be here today. He was in this morning before a mic check, and I know he's been feeling under the weather, and I hope he's recovered fully. Hope to see him back here soon.
There he is. He's appeared. so he's at least in the section now. Let's go to the next question.
Yeah, well, Chris.
Rodrigo Munoz from Stockholm, Sweden asks, is it okay to rip the whole office hours format and do a Swedish sustainability show? Perhaps not every day, but that is certainly the intention.
Go ahead, Jason.
I believe I speak for everyone when I say not only is it permissive, but it is encouraged. Go for it. Absolutely. Fork it to death.
Yeah, go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, I mean, it's up to you, Alex. You're running the show, so if he wants to do a total clone, I'd say go for it. But that's, the buck stops at Alex.
I think you're gonna have to send us a letter, and I'll have our lawyers look at it, and then they'll talk about royalties, and that will only be paid in Bitcoin and NFTs, and so no, the whole intention is for people to rip what we're doing. So what we're doing here is the goal, and the reason that we show so much about how we do Office Hours 2.0, and we talk about our system, and we talk about how it works. Is the goal is that other people will go take some part of it. All of it, some of it, a little bit of it, doesn't matter. Take it, run it with it. Our only request, you come back and tell us how it's working. Ask questions. Tell us what you've learned that's better than what we do, so that we can learn from what you're doing. That's our real request, is just to contribute. If you're taking something out of the group and it's making a difference, just come back and contribute back into the group and let us learn from you. So hopefully you'll do that. Next question.
Steve Brenneman from Indianapolis asks, how important has office hours become to 090? Is it a significant part of the business model?
It isn't really. I mean, it benefits it in the sense that I have lots of people that I can hire when I need them, like little bits and pieces. Like it's like I need someone for this, or I need someone for that, and there's just the right person for that problem, that I have. And so, me being able to do that relatively effortlessly has been great. Me understanding Zoom really well, because we do this all the time, has been useful for us. And so I think that those are some of the big things that we've gotten out of. I think we've gotten a couple jobs. Most of the jobs that I do are really giant, weird, like difficult things that aren't a little different than what we talk about here. So I don't know, I don't know how much work we've gotten to it, but I do feel like I just understand what I'm doing much better because of what we're doing here. So next question.
Arthur Karekis from Toronto, Canada asks, what are your thoughts on the importance of entertainment in virtual events? What are some of the coolest virtual entertainment pieces you have seen? And what do you think is the future of virtual entertainment?
It's not really a 700, but we'll jump into it. Go ahead, Courtney.
Well, I don't like entertainment in virtual events because, at least interactive ones, it'd be fine if it's a entertainment event that happens virtually rather than in person, and I'm fine to attend a good concert, film, or movie, or live show. But I think we've tried putting the viewer in control of his view or her view during a virtual event, and it just hasn't worked out. People are too lazy to do it. I'd rather have a director making decisions on when to cut to a close-up because they know the song's better in a musical event, and when to cut to a wide shot. And I don't want to necessarily be using the mouse constantly to look around and change my POV. It's too much work, and I'm just too lazy. So,
go ahead, Jason.
I read this a little bit differently, which was how important is it to be entertained when you are doing any sort of event? And my answer is, without engagement, there's no entertainment, and without entertainment, there's no engagement. So pretty freaking important.
Go ahead, Sky.
Well, to Jason's point, yes, they're twines of the same rope in the sense of entertainment, and if you're not entertaining, at least be interesting. And that's what Matt in the Kitchen learned early days, was we needed to have interesting and entertaining chefs to be on board with Madeline. And again, to get Madeline to not be the one in charge of calling the show, but to be the entertaining talent. That was the huge learning curve for us because she kept trying to direct. And once we started getting the team, you've heard me say that, earlier about video production as a team sport, then the talent could be concentrating on being engaged with the audience. And that's what we do with our live shows or live virtual cooking experiences with corporations that come in from their kitchen. And it's the best. They say it's one of the most fun they've had in a long time.
Yeah, I think that just getting the audience involved, whether they're cooking with you, whether they're asking questions, whether they're voting on something, whether they're, that what entertains people is feeling like they're part of it, and I think that that's the thing that really makes things work. And the passive entertainment in a small screen is not very compelling, so unless you're willing to spend a lot of money on it. So once you start spending more than $75,000 a minute, you can start to become competitive, and you're really competitive at $250,000 to $500,000 a minute. You might be able to keep people watching something passively, but if you're going to do it on a shoestring budget, you have to include them. That's the cheapest way to do it. Next question.
Andy Carluccio from Washington, D.C., USA asks, favorite episodes since episode 600 and goals for content or other milestones by episode 800.
Go ahead, John.
Great question, Andy. There's so many good episodes. Leo Laporte was great. Elmo was great. Galloping Gourmet was great. I don't know Mr. Wright's first name.
600. So what would have been 100 episodes? That's in the last 3 months, right? Like the last 3.5 months. What would be our favorite ones in the last 3 months?
And my favorite one by 800 is to see Zoom ISO 2.0 with isolated audio from Andy on Office Hours.
3 months. You got 3 months. Go ahead, Sky.
Yes, I enjoyed the music with Todd and the pianist gentleman that again was very entertaining, but was also interactive and visually stimulating for me. That was in the last several weeks. That was amazing.
Yeah, go ahead, Jeffrey.
Yeah, that's Dan Tepfer that did that. There's a lot of things, and the one thing that was really interesting is just the other things that came from it, like the cooking and stuff like that. Watching the shows become show and a halves, so to speak, out of everything. So just tons of stuff. I wish I could think of another one. Dan Tepfer being the big one in the last 100 episodes.
Go ahead, Dennis.
Yeah, I was going to say Dan Tepfer was the one that stood out for me. And there have been a lot of good episodes, but that one, his software, FarPlay, solves a problem that I had. At the beginning of the first lockdown, I was running weekly live shows to replace the open mic night that a local pub ran. My friend was the manager of the pub, and we got that working. And we did, I think it was about 8 episodes in the end, streaming on Facebook. But it was all pre-recorded stuff because getting music in live was too much of a problem. And there were a couple of things I experimented with, but nothing was as good as what FarPlay is.
Yeah. Go ahead, Tony.
Super Saturday.
Yeah, Super Saturday was a lot of fun. That was good. That was really good. It was crazy. Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, to me, the problem is that every time I think about what is my favorite show, it could have been a Tuesday that solved a problem for me that had been bugging me for a long time. And in that context, the magic of office hours is that you never know when that nugget that is going to make everything incredibly easier for you will appear in this show. And it causes me to have to say, well, if I'm really concentrating on audio, this one's all just come on Tuesdays because we talk more about audio on Tuesdays. Well, that magic thing may show up on Thursday. So it drives me crazy that if I'm gone from this, I feel like I could be missing the one thing that's going to really have an impact on my life. And so darn you, Alex, for making this so addictive.
Go ahead, Nigel.
Yeah, learn something every day. Every show is valuable. I want to talk about 2 things that happened in after hours if I'm allowed. I thought watching the Super Bowl thing was very entertaining. I don't know football from a hole in the ground. And my wife loves Super Bowl, so I listened to the commentary, and I learned all sorts of fun things from that. I have to tell you, the best hour in after hours for me was the racing one. If you could create the community around F1 that use this technology, I would struggle to know which one to be in sometimes. So that to me was just a gift.
we're hoping to do more of that. It's having folks that we have a lot of folks here that watch passively or are part of it tangentially that work in a lot of great places, and so we're hoping to do some more stuff in after hours to make that possible. There's stuff we can't put on YouTube. Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, I'll have to agree with Nigel. F1 and the Super Bowl, and I have to bite my tongue not to talk about sports because I had a temptation many times to comment on a particular play or something. And my favorite episode was the one with Dan Tepfer. I live in a town surrounded by musicians, and I can't tell you how many of my musician friends I've talked to about that show, and they come back and say, wow, that stuff's great. I'm going to start incorporating that.
Yeah,
so that was hands down my favorite show.
Go ahead, Liberty.
Yeah, Super Saturday was awesome. Just because if I go back to the other question of where you see office hours in, years to come, it's like that was a block of programming and we had all the diversity that we have for office hours. So the fact that we're heading there, so in however many years where you could literally be watching a show from anywhere in the world and just, choose your own adventure. So yes, Super Saturday was just a glimpse of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Jeffrey?
One last one is Michael Krasny. I did not know who he was. And of course, afterwards, I learned a lot more from that. So
it was a lot of fun to have Michael on. I'd listened to him for so long. It was a little bit of a bucket moment for me, so to be able to actually interview the person that I listened to interview probably more than anybody else. So it was, really a pleasure. Go ahead, John.
Ironically for me, there was an episode where Alex mentioned clicker for slides for large venues.
That was the best one.
It's been a pain point for me for 2 years, and to hear that was just like Dan was great. There's been a ton. The Super Saturday was awesome. I was stuck at a theater. My daughter was performing an Irish Nutcracker, and so I was stuck there all day because I was filming it that night, and so I got to watch that while everything was kind of getting prepared. But to solve a problem, real world, something I've been struggling with. It was great to see. I've already purchased a few of them. Looking forward for them to come in. So thank you. It's little stuff like that fixes points of pain in your life. That's what makes a difference on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, absolutely. Here's the funny thing is I don't know how their website looks now, but DSAN was notorious for the worst website ever. For a long time, it looked like they hadn't updated it for a decade, and so it was this horrible website, but all of us had that moment where you finally had a clicker that worked, and it was like, whoa, Dreamweaver. It was just you're just totally it just fixed it, and anyway, it's a funny thing. But I think, for me, I think that the Michael Krasny, the NFT conversation, which we're going to do more of, which I just thought was really helped us get through a lot of those bits and pieces, the damn Tepfer, the Parsec. Parsec was just that was just an immense. I went from barely understanding what Parsec was to completely understanding it, in an amazingly short amount of time, and so I thought that was a really great one. And I was really glad we were going to get a salesperson, which would have been great, but having a tech person there answering, I felt like that was an example of this is what we have to do in our second hours, is get the right people and get them set up and then just drill in. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael asks, how can we encourage diversity and inclusivity within the panel?
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
It's just basically getting the word out and finding the right people that want to come on every single day. I think we've talked about this before. It's being able to, once they know that it's going to be here, and then they can come from there. The other thing we can do is just kind of review what we've said, how we've said things, and try to make it so it feels a little bit better to be on the panel with everybody else.
Go, Jason.
I'm going to resist the urge to say just how non-diverse I am and just speak from my heart. I think diversity happens as the result of doing what we do and having an increased viewership and, in turn, participatory role and opportunity for everybody. And inclusivity happens because we exclude nobody. So we should just continue to do that.
Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, and we've talked about this since the very first show that I was on and encouraged it and things like that. But all you can do is open a door and be welcoming. I'd never forget that I'm extraordinarily lucky because my life is arranged in such a way that I can take 2 or 3 hours every morning and not have to run out and go to work and not have to struggle for the resources to keep my wife or myself or my children, in stuff. Not everybody can do that. I think we would have tons and tons more inclusion here if it weren't for the reality that a lot of people face obstacles that we don't. All we can do is throw the door open. And I know we've talked about this a lot, and Alex has always said, we just have to be welcoming, but people can show up when they can show up, and there's nothing we can do about that.
Go ahead, John.
I think it really comes into like the diversity is across the board, whether that's racial backgrounds and ethnicity, knowledge, education. I think the biggest thing that we can do as a community is making sure that we're reaching out and bringing others into the community who may not look like us, who may not have the same backgrounds as us, and bring that diversity of thought to the panel.
Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, I think we just keep doing what we're doing and we become more diverse. And I'd like to see, like, on big global occasions like New Year's and so on, if we could go around to each time zone and bring someone into our show from each time zone and go completely around the world, I think that would be phenomenal.
Yeah, go ahead, Sky.
Well, I'm going to refer back to John's comment earlier about what is the problem that you're trying to solve. And Alex, you solved his real world problem. So consequently, the more problems that we are able to solve, I think the more people that would be interested in participating.
Yeah. And for our producers, just know that the next question is the last one, unless you ask more questions about 700. So just letting you know. Yeah, I think that a lot of our panel. So the other thing to notice is that our membership is actually pretty diverse. So if you look at how many, especially in after hours and so on and so forth, it's a pretty diverse membership. Who shows up in the panel are people who have, some industry knowledge. They have some experience. And in many ways, I think that the panel, I've thought about this a lot. And I think that the panel in many ways is a reflection of the past, because we are the folks that did this, who are comfortable answering a bunch of questions because we've done this for a decade or more, and the past industry was very heavy white men, so what you're looking at is not the future, but the past. And so I think that as we keep going and as we keep on providing these opportunities, we'll keep on having more people that are coming from different backgrounds and different parts of the world and everything else. And then they'll be the ones giving us advice. But I think that it's a hard lift just because the natural progression of things for the last, 50 years was very vertical, and so the best thing that we can do is keep on answering questions and contributing back to the community in the panel, and really making sure that we're helping the next generation who don't, again, as John said, don't look like us and don't come from our backgrounds, making sure that we're providing that opportunity for them to do that. And then they will slowly, fill in the panel. So I think that's but we want to be clear of that. But I think that's really why I've really thought about it. Like, it's like, why is this all one way? And I was like, because we're the ones that have, as Bill said, we're the ones that have the time, like we're on the other side of that cliff that took 20, 30 years to get to. And when it was extremely one way, and I think it's becoming a lot more diverse, and we'll keep on paying attention to that. I do think that's what's amazing is that on any given day, there's 5 continents represented in the producers or the panel, with all kinds of different backgrounds. When you go into after hours, you just see people from all over. And I always want to encourage people in after hours to put your location in, because it's inspiring. The reason I want people to put their location in after hours and why we do it here is because it's inspiring to look across. For me, I just love looking across in after hours, and I look at all the locations. Like, oh, this one's coming from Singapore and from Australia. And then you just get how global the community is and the background. So I think that, and I think we've done, I think we do a pretty good job of making it inclusive as far as, finding ways to work with everybody that comes in. That's, the only thing we really require is them to be appropriate. So anyway, we'll keep working on it. Next question.
Rick Price from Kansas City says, given where office hours is now and where it's going, and the successes had to date, is there anything you'd do differently if starting this project today?
Paul?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Ed. I'd say more entrepreneurial activity, more mentoring, more incubation of shows like Tony's. Those are some things that I would put more energy into restarting it today. But basically, we're starting over every day, and we're growing and acquiring new focus every day.
Sky.
Well, pre-COVID, we didn't have to change, but the flattening of the world in isolation forced us into doing something new. And so I embrace it and completely, hijack Alex's point of I now have a Rolodex of people that have skills that are changing with the need of this new virtual connection. And so how I would do a project, I'm doing it. John Preto is giving me an opportunity to participate with lots of other people in an event. And so we're bringing in people that have not had any experience, but want to learn. And so we're all learning from those that either have the gift, have the time, or have the interest at least. And so we're kind of sorting ourselves in that way. So I think new projects, new ways of doing things is, as Paul, as he mentioned, is happening in the moment.
I'm just trying to think of starting, not like things I would do in the middle, but like how, if the day that I turned it on, decided to do it, like what would I have told myself? Like looking back, I was trying to think of this, I was looking at this question. I was like, so if I went back in time 700 days and I was sitting there going, I think I should do this. What would I tell me like for the first one if I was starting it? And I think that the only thing that I would change is saying you should build a separate account for this so that there's a bunch of owners so that anybody can start the event. Like I think that's the only thing that I would really change. I think that, of how I started it was like, it's like a real, like that's the number one pain point is that, and if you ever do after hours, just do it on two separate accounts because they can't coexist at the same time like that. So I think that those would be the big things that I would tell myself. I don't think we would get, there's a lot of things that we're moving slower than even I want to move. And it's, a compression of time. And, it is incredible. Like if you actually look at what we've created with no budget, or some budget, but like budget on our own, but like without a staff and without a whatever, it's a pretty amazing thing. And I don't know, like if you did too much at the beginning, there wouldn't be as much participation. Like we own this as a group because so many people have put effort into it, and it would have been really easy to do a lot more of it all up front. And then people would feel like it's a service, I had PixelCore was 2,000 people paying $50 a month, to be in it. And, there was always what have you done for me lately? What am I getting for my money? And so I was pretty committed to I felt like when we talk about inclusion, I couldn't figure out a way to make PixelCore run without charging for it. But I knew that at $50 a month, it was excluding an enormous part of the world. And we would do what we could. Like some people who could put effort into it, if they traded, they were on teams or whatever, they get in free. I was always looking for whatever I could do that would have people not have to pay for it. So, but we couldn't afford to do anything like Zoom. It's, when we did it, it was expensive. We had to do everything in Flash because we couldn't afford the video, just download it. So I think that I don't think I would change that much because I think it was an organic. We've found our way to a lot of these things, and I'd be hesitant to say that. I think if you change that, it's kind of the butterfly effect. If you changed any of it, we wouldn't be here. Like something else would have happened. So I'm pretty happy with it. Next question.
Laura Thompson from Texas in the US asks, "What was your aha moment from all of office hours?"
I'll go ahead, Nigel.
There's so many, but there are two I think really stand out to me, and they are places where I got to do something along with other people. So one was the Raspberry Pi, and that flipped a bit on me, on my understanding of Pi and this community and how it works. The other one, maybe more personally, Alex, you came and helped me color grade my camera one day, and that flipped a bit on how to do that. And when I do it every day, actually, whether this is good or bad, you can make that decision. I hear your voice commentating on what you did and try and remember the steps to go through.
You've gone from like, oh my gosh, he has this camera and he keeps screwing it up, to the best, I think the best or one of the best every day. It looks really, really good, and the color looks really good. The whole frame looks really, really nice, both in SDR and HDR. And so it is amazing, because it was painful. That's why I finally took over. It was painful to watch you not have that camera work, because I was like, that camera's capable of so much, and you've really taken it to a really incredible level. So yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Dennis.
I think mine was first turning my camera on in after hours, because when I signed up, I filled in the form and said I wanted to volunteer for a whole bunch of stuff and never heard anything back. But as soon as I got involved in after hours, I started making my way into various different roles, and I'm now doing huge amounts of stuff. It's great fun. So I encourage people to come into after hours and turn your camera on.
I've been challenged. We probably ought to just sit down in after hours and we talk about it. I've been challenged. We have there's we felt bad when you said that, because there's like 700 people who raised their hand and said, I want to play. And I'm sure that a lot of them have found their way through it, but we haven't really emailed them back. And it's mostly me trying to think about how to structure, asking them all the things they need to know. And I should just send something out and go, here, we're looking for this week. We're looking for this week. We're looking for this. I was thinking about this yesterday. I was like, I'm just going to do something next Monday, and I'm just going to send it out to the big list and say, if you're still interested, here are like 5 different things. And then there'll be questionnaires within those 5 things that people can do. And then we'll just keep doing those opportunities rather than trying to. I had this thing like, well, people will sign up for one thing and then next week they'll find out something else. And they're like, why didn't I know about that? So that's the problem that we had this problem in Pixel Core, where people would sign up for something and then they'd be upset that they'd now committed to something that they wanted to jump, or they'd start jumping and then, teams would get emptied out. So that's why I think about it a lot. Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Laura. And man, there's so many moments to pick one. I'd have to pick 2 and say it'd be a tie between Guy Cochran telling me about the LG quad monitor and getting a bunch of those for my office. It's revolutionized how I connect my machines and how I see what's on my Mac Mini and on my Courtney little PC. And then the other thing that would be tied would be Synergy, which now allows me to move between monitors. And I know, Alex, you hate Synergy and you don't like it, but it's always worked for me.
I loved it until it broke my computer, like trashed it. So go ahead, Liberty.
I'd say 2 for me. One, AWS, that will always be like one of the best series for me, and just like walking through that. So Guy and Jeff and Chirag and Jonas going through that. And the second one I would say would be working with Sky, like in the whole Mad in the Kitchen, like being a part of that experience where watching the ramp up to them launching it and doing it, to actually, I think we might have been the last show or the second last show, to like, now we've got this team here, that team here, this team, like that was just like exhilarating.
Yeah. Stefan?
Yeah, my aha moment was when I realized that the topic we are talking about is not the first thing. It's the pattern, how we are communicating, how this whole thing works, how all the teeths kind of interact together. And when I realized that, and a couple of ideas kind of exploded in my head and said, oh, this could be used there and this could be used there. And it's still processing, and there's still coming a lot of new ideas every day.
Good, Bill.
I mentioned the mic thing, which was probably number 1, but really close behind that was my involvement with the remotes when we did the band recordings. That was illuminating in so many ways. I mean, I was a music major in college, but I quickly got pulled off into the video side of things and ended up not pursuing that as far as I would have expected to when I started that. But to be able to immerse myself in a global community of musicians and just experience those meetings and everybody pulling creatively in different directions and then watching it coalesce into a communal direction that was still led by somebody who was in charge, so we didn't end up like cats just wandering, and eventually being able to produce pieces of work that benefited from the collaboration. To me, that was a magical process. I still miss it. And there are more songs out there, and I'm hoping that we get back on that track because it was fabulous.
Good, Tony.
I have had so many and that I really can't name them all, from the experience of the things that I've been able to help the church with, to conversation with Tony Mobley and this global conversation, all of the great interviews that I've been able to do with a lot of you, Alex Lindsay and Andy Carluccio, Guy Cochran, Dr. Hasmuk, and, I can go on and on and on, Courtney Gooden, all of those great conversations, Liberty White, and I go on and on and on and on. But one of the things that really sort of struck me and was impactful, and Liberty may not remember this, but we had just gotten to know each other. And she said, wow, I'm having a conversation with the world famous Tony Mobley. And I was like, huh? And that let me know that I'm always on and that people are watching. And guess what? I get to take credit for, in a way, for encouraging Liberty White to be a part of this community. So I am so thankful.
Richard?
Yeah, it's hard to follow that. I think one of the first Belfast days, that the first day we actually got people connected to our system, where originally I thought, okay, we'll do these every so often and it'll be an outlier. And now it's become like a way we work. Every single show that we stream, we have half a dozen to a couple of remote control team members as part of the main production. And it was just an amazing first try at it when we had people on Zoom just call a show. We decided on that last day, that specific day, do you know what, we've got everyone tied into the system, so let's just have anyone who wants to raise their hand call the show. It's just amazing.
Yeah, Sky.
Well, it's so awesome because, Richard, you are one of my aha moments when I'm physically switching cameras from Seattle on an interface to cameras that are in Belfast and talking to Mickey in my ear it was just, we are there. We are in a virtual reality of connection. And the other aha moment, keeping it short, because yes, Tony, I too have many, are you kidding me, things that have happened in the last 700 days. Daria Musk, I didn't realize her music. I didn't.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't realize I needed that. And that fed my soul. So sorry.
Yeah, I think I've had a couple aha moments like that. I was like, oh, we hit something there that, when Mike Andrews passed and it actually realized that I was connected to somebody that I'd never met. When the mixture of Brian Vander Ark from the Verpipe and when he first came out, it was like first real concert, like where we're asking him questions, and I was like, oh, that's the format that I want. That's the format I've been looking for when I've been in the music industry, of like, I get to meet the band and listen to some of the music and have the conversation. When we did the Raspberry Pi, here's the funny thing. We got a lot out of the Mad in the Kitchen. The very first time we cooked with Damianti was the aha moment of like, this is the way I would love to cook. And we haven't really gotten back to that. There was something magical about it. Was either the first or second one that just boom. It was like, oh, this is really interactive and a lot of fun. And but it was like, it just popped. Parsec, the thing for me for Parsec was, I was like, I'm never going back to NAB. like that. It was after I literally closed it off, and someone just asked me the other day, of course you're going to NAB, and I was like, no, I'm not. No, hopefully I'm going to have some people go, but I was like, I would rather. What I want out of NAB is to have a team from our group wandering around, and then all of us get to ask. We all get to spend an hour at a booth asking questions, and the person just gets the questions from us. But I'd rather be in my house watching and being able to be with everybody here and be able to do that. But I would rather do that than actually go, because what I got out of that was how much smarter we were than I was, and that was just a smack, and then in the nose. And then Dan Tepfer was one that was just like, an aha moment when Todd played. The first time he played for us in after hours, it was like 5 o'clock in the morning, 5:30 in the morning. And he's like playing this incredible music for us. I was like, what happened here? like this is just crazy that we're doing that. And then I think even last week with Super Bowl graphics and the F1 and stuff like that, you just start seeing these little seeds of like, oh, if we can do that a couple more times, if we can. And so when I see those little things, I was talking about the Raspberry Pi thing for like months, like just because you could see that if we just figure this out and figure out how to do that every day, or figure out how to do that once a week, or figure out how to, and we keep on fumbling around with things that are around it and so on and so forth. But I think that, we'll keep finding our way there, so.
Look who showed up.
Yeah, it's Fenwick. How you doing, Fenwick? We're glad to see that you're still alive.
I'm kind of alive. Yeah. I've been sick. I've been a combination of sick and busy. So
that's the worst.
Snuck in the back door.
Yeah, that's good. Well, we're glad to see you. Go ahead, Lois. The next question. I'm sorry. Called Lois.
It is from Lois Richter in Davis, California, and she says, please list the spin-offs and office hours projects that have happened since office hours started.
Go ahead, Sky.
I had the great pleasure of my daughter working with Graham Kerr in doing a thing called Tea at 3, and that they were again brought into this experience. Well, my daughter is now full-time editing, and she's made that her career. It's like the apple didn't fall far from the tree, and that was never in our plan or her plan, but it's worked out. And then, of course, the Mad in the Kitchen opportunity is originally a concept, was an idea, was a hobby that turned into a bigger concept that is now a business. And again, we continue to see the ripple effect of this loving into each other in this way.
Good, Bill.
So the Remotes, the Office Hours band, put out 2 music videos, and there's a couple more living on hard drives someplace when people can coalesce and come back together to finish them up.
Go ahead, Tony.
Conversations with Tony Mobley.
Yeah. The Belfast method. The birding is starting. The birding is like a little egg right now. That's starting to push your little beak out. A lot. Yeah, go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, not to be forgotten is the upcoming Office Hours rocket launch, which a lot of people are participating, actually going out to the dry lake bed in Nevada with John Preto to watch the launch and cover the launch right here on Office Hours or After Hours.
Go ahead, Dennis.
And yes, the biggest one is After Hours, because we all get to talk freely there. And of course, there's all the labs as well. So lots going on there.
And I will, I'll argue, probably get myself in trouble for this, but I'll argue that the workplace, transforming the workplace with Zoom is an offshoot of what we've been doing here. I think that pushing that envelope of doing that, and showing that you could build something bigger and better out of Zoom, I think has ripples, of what those things look like. And I think there's all kinds of other shows people are using different pieces of what we've learned, so I think that it's and I even think possibly even, some of the announcements and keynotes we've seen are somewhat indirect offshoots. So these are not direct offshoots, but indirect offshoots of, I think the hard work that everybody's doing here, again, is serving as a guide to a lot of people and how they think about, what these look like. Go ahead. And the Hosmux, webinar or Hosmux events in South Africa. Go ahead, Tony.
I believe the Zoom Test Kitchen is also an offshoot of Office Hours, whether directly or indirectly.
I don't know if it is. I think that might have been. I think it happened almost at the same time, but maybe. Paul?
Yeah, After Hours, I agree with whoever said that. Great place to go and try things out in 24/7, all around the clock. It's great.
Yeah. Go ahead, Sky.
Yep. One more tease. I think OH Space is going to be a thing. I think it's going to be a thing.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. Next question.
TJ Asher from Minneapolis, Minnesota says, since Dennis is on the panel today and not busy with 2.0, can he explain how he created the new 2.0 SuperSource background? I really like it.
Go ahead, Dennis.
And the answer is I didn't. It was Alex 4D Golner who created that. He just handed the file off to me when he was busy with other things to work on it a bit and generate the videos. He's actually been doing a bit more work on it overnight. And we've got a new file which I got uploaded to the server this morning, ready for JJ to download. So once he gets that in place, hopefully tomorrow we can give that one a spin and see if it ticks the boxes that Alex was looking for.
Yeah. Alex and I went back and forth. He's like, well, what do you like? And I'm like, well, I really like the end of the Matrix, or not the Matrix well, the Matrix would be good, but the end of Jason Bourne or Bourne Identity. So that's where the inspiration happened. And then he started building from it and making it better and doing stuff. So it's a good start. Does someone know when 800 is? Like, what is the 800 date? It's past our 2-year anniversary, which is coming up fast. I mean, we're just a month away from 2 years of doing this. But I don't know. It's sometime in July, I think.
Thursday, June 2nd.
Thursday, June 2nd. All right. I'll keep that in mind. So Thursday, June 2nd, we'll have the 800 episode. And so that'll be a lot of fun. I'm always amazed. Just, like I'm always amazed by this group, by this community that we built. I can't quite put my head around like that we have just collected such an amazing, group of humans that hang out together all the time. It's really inspiring. I don't know anything like it in the world. So anyway, I just want to thank everybody for all the different effort they make, whether it's in Discord or in After Hours or Office Hours or Office Hours 2.0 or the Belfast method, the Mobley process, the Gaheo concept, all these, there's an incredible thing of everyone kind of, and I think that we're moving the world, like slowly and small, so we're just kind of pushing it. But I think that there's just pushing it just a little bit, and it's just moving a little. But I think that we have an opportunity to do a lot more. And so I think, anyway, so thanks to everybody. And thanks to the producers for keeping this conversation going. And thanks to to our panelists. We can't do this without you. So it was a good panel today. And look at how good the cameras are. I just want to say, I was thinking about it a little earlier. I was like, no, you don't ever see Zoom like this. Like you're out of the meetings and everyone's just nasty looking, and this looks so good. So just a good looking panel. All right. No, we're going to jump into After Hours tomorrow. I would come tomorrow for both. I would carve out some time for tomorrow's Office Hours, probably a little extra time for After Hours. All right. We'll see you soon.